So are you suggesting Michael Mann messed with the data?
Well, I'm suggesting, and Judge Irving found that he and his team, a man and his team, presented false information, incorrect data to the jury.
Hello, I'm Phil McAleer.
And I'm Anne McElhenney, and welcome to the Anne and Film Scoop. It's the week of St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, we're recording this, or should I say this, on St. Patrick's Day?
We are actually recording this on St. Patrick's Day.
Hence the green...
Things we do for you.
The green jacket.
When we should be drinking heavily somewhere.
That's right.
No, obviously not.
Don't do drugs, kids.
Yes.
Green jacket and green pants. Or
Not
trousers.
even a green jacket. It's a green jacket, but it's actually a green jacket that came from Ireland, I think. It's some kind of tweed situation.
McGee's of Donegal.
Oh, McGee's of Donegal. Very famous.
Yes.
Right.
So this is the Anne and Film Scoop. To those of you who are new to the podcast, we just don't publish a weekly podcast. We reveal the truth about what the mainstream media would rather not talk about and the stories they don't report. So that's why we're the Unreported Stories Society. And through the Unreported Story Society, we expose the truth about all kinds of things: climate, abortion, the Me Too movement, government corruption, injustice, all kinds of injustice. We do it across all formats, podcast, plays, etc. So what's on today's show, Anne McElhenney from Donegal, Ireland?
Well, we ask if this is the end of climate hysterics and climate hypocrites.
Yes.
It's been a very bad few days, actually, for our old friend, climate alarmist Dr. Michael Mann.
Yes, instead of $1 million payout, he is now, he's going to be counting his pennies. And he's been declared a fraudster by a fake data doctor by a court. And climate junkies, we're going to talk about climate junkies who really love their junkettes. See what I did there?
And talking about us as being, you were given an introduction film reminding people of who we are and what we do. The reason Michael Mann is such a favourite of ours is that we, unlike any other media outlet on the planet Earth,
yes,
we were the only two journalists to attend every last day of the climate change trial in Washington, D.C., which was quite the farce. By the way, and we're going to be talking a lot about free speech today, and actually, funny enough, it's a lot about that trial was really free speech on trial.
Yes, that was when Mark Steyn was being sued by Michael Mann for defamation. But we're also going to bring you about climate junkies who love their junkets, and they could be reaching the end of the road, which is a clever...
Oh, bum. Look at Phelan with the puns.
Play on words.
Yeah.
And we look at the proposed deportation of Mahmoud Khalil. I love saying that word. Mahmoud Khalil.
I'm not sure that's how you pronounce it.
Mahmoud
Khalil.
The protest leader and possibly Hamas-connected activist arrested at Columbia University. Is this a case of expelling awful people who support terrorists, or is it a free speech issue? Our thoughts on this might surprise you, and we hope the government has done their homework.
And we bring you the latest in Irish anti-Semitism, which is exhausting because every week there's a new horror.
Yes, actually several new horrors.
Several new horrors. From Israelis being spat on in bars in Dublin to no debate being allowed on college campuses.
But actually, there's a brighter side. Actually, I've been struggling with trying to get a name. I did a Substack on the Israelis, and I was trying to do it. Comedians in cars getting coffee. Israelis being spot on in bars getting Guinness. Anyway,
there's no funny side to this, I have to say.
No, there's not. There's a quasi fake bright side. This whole genocide thing, fake genocide, has forced the Irish state broadcaster RTE to acknowledge finally, and the United Nations, by the way, to acknowledge that life begins at conception. So there we are. You'll find out why later. And
Northern Ireland film. Oh my God, are you so thrilled, film, that Northern Ireland has joined the pantheon of progressive countries around the world?
I'm self-deporting now to Northern Ireland because
why, film? Why was that
so progressive? And how do we know it's become progressive? Because it's just had its first radical Islamist stabbing.
Yeah,
that is. So if you import mass third worlders from places we know not or care less about, you will have radical Islamic stabbings. And I
love this next stories of ours. Political violence is only okay if the left do it because they don't have to follow the rules they set for us. Stephen Colbert admits that he enjoys the ongoing attacks on Teslas and the Tesla dealerships and Tesla cars. And we reveal the truth, the strange truth about Stephen Colbert and his relationship with Teslas. You'll enjoy that.
And we need to talk about Romania. Everyone needs to talk about Romania. No one is talking.
No one's talking about Romania.
So basically, long and short of it, they've blocked 2 candidates from standing for presidential election because they were right wing and challenged the establishment. Does that sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
But the Trump is an enemy of democracy, a threat to democracy. They're silent.
They're suddenly silent, very quiet.
As an EU country, European Union country, shows it really is the threat to democracy. So, speaking of threats to democracy, a year ago, we were with Mark Steyn in a DC courtroom at the sham defamation lawsuit where Mark Steyn was being sued for making disparaging comments about Professor Michael Mann's hockey stick
in an
graph.
opinion piece.
In an
opinion piece, a blog opinion piece for the National Review.
Yes, the hockey stick graph purported to show that the world's temperatures were relatively flat until evil man started the Industrial Revolutions.
Man with one N.
Yes, and the temperatures went up almost in a straight line. Steyn criticized the graph, and he also criticized the Penn State investigation into Mann's alleged misbehavior in several emails, where he denigrated and tried to censor and get fired anyone who dared challenge his science. And Mark Steyn made the, in my opinion, legitimate point that Penn State had just covered up Jerry Sandusky sexually abusing minors.
And his point was, if they would cover up for a sexual abuser of minors, what might they do in a cover up maybe for their climate change pop star?
Yes. So that's to me is a fair argument. If you cover up for evil, there's lesser evil over there, and you have to agree that Michael Mann is a much lesser evil.
That's right. Why wouldn't you cover up for the lesser evil, and particularly one that's such a big celebrity around the world?
So we covered it in a unique way called the Climate Change on Trial podcast. So we were there every day. We would get the transcripts every day. They would be sent to. We would extract the most exciting, the most dramatic parts, and they would be sent to a Hollywood studio over, that evening, and they would be reenacted by Hollywood actors.
Amazing actors, by the way.
Amazing actors. And we would
have it edited overnight, and it came out every morning into your inbox. You got the latest from the trial. And as I said, we were the only people who were there every day. And the reason we took the highlights every day was because, and I have to say, sitting through court cases now, many, many court cases with you, Phelim, there's so much procedure, such boring procedural stuff that goes on that that in a day, actually, the highlights can be boiled down to a very convenient 1 hour podcast.
Yes. I mean, it was an incredibly popular podcast. I think we became the 3rd or 4th most popular science podcast in the UK, in Canada. We were the 15th most popular podcast, I think, on the planet at one stage. I mean, it became very, very popular because people really liked the truth. Now,
so that was all about a year ago.
Funny you should talk about procedure because that's interesting. Anyway, Mark Steyn did not do well out of the trial. When we last left the podcast, Mark had indeed, the writer and broadcaster Mark Steyn, had indeed been found guilty of defamation, and the jury had awarded Michael Mann $1
$1 of compensation. That was to represent like all the awful stuff, the terrible things, the terrible damage. They judged that the damage was $1, but they decided to punish.
No, the punitive damages.
What's the word punitive mean?
Punishment.
So the punishment
for
the $1
was $1 million.
Makes no sense at all, obviously, right? But don't forget, we were in a DC courtroom, where nothing makes any sense.
And you know how much justice conservatives can expect in a coastal American city.
And can I mention the reason why they probably gave $1 as an estimate of what actual damage had been done to him? Because in the whole trial that went on, very lengthy trial, the main thing that needed to be proved was that the guy had been damaged. That was the main thing that needed to be done. And that was the one thing that they couldn't do. And in fact, it became hysterical because they told this anecdote about Michael Mann being in College Station, which is the town where the university is. And he was there with his wife and daughter. And he talked about this beautiful scene, this pastoral scene of them going shopping. And them going shopping to the Wegmans. So they went to the Wegmans in College Station. And one day, when they were having this delightful trek and expedition, let's put it, to the Wegmans, someone in the Wegmans looked at Michael Mann in a strange way. That's it, by the way. That's all of it, by the way. That's the whole thing. The guy who looked at them in a strange way did not say anything. He didn't say, "Oh, you, Michael Mann. I put it to you, Michael Mann.
I smite you.
I smite you with your hockey stick." There was nothing of any kind happened like that. And that's why I think they came up with the $1.
Yes.
So, but there's been a development.
But did you mention it was aisle 9 of Wegmans?
I should have mentioned. Sorry, Philip. It was aisle 9, which obviously I'm not sure what's
College
normally
Station?
in College Station.
So if any of our listeners are in College Station, could you go
take a photograph
photograph of aisle 9
at Wegmans?
And
yes. And this is the kind of work that we need you to do for us, because this is the kind of work this is journalistic. This is journalism at its very best.
Please. And
now, there's been a huge development in the case that is justice is beginning to be seen to be done.
Yes.
Is that correct, Philip?
Yes. First of all, the judge they have appealed the
Mark Stein's side have appealed.
And Michael Mann's side has appealed other part. I mean, everyone's appealing.
It'll never
everything.
end. It'll never end.
So. Yeah, we should point out this is, I think, the 13th year of the case. First of all, the judge has reduced the ludicrous $1 million damages to an equally ludicrous $5,000.
It shouldn't be $5,000.
No. By the way, if it's $1 compensatory, then
if it's $1,
there's no damage.
Yeah.
And if there's no damage, then
what are you getting compensation for?
Yeah, and he shouldn't be defamed.
Correct.
Right? It's not defamation if it's $1.
The whole thing should be. So in that case, actually,
yes.
The whole thing should be thrown out.
Yes.
Because the jury came up with that.
Yes.
They made a judgment.
Yes. By the way, there's no case anyway. This is a free speech issue, as we'll be talking about free speech issues
Yes.
later on in the show. But then, in a supremely ironic twist, Michael Mann and his lawyers were. Oh, I should also add that National Review earlier in the case, who Mark was writing for, got themselves removed from the case. They brought a slap injunction, which is about stopping people suing you to debate current issues. And the judge said, yes, this is a slap case, and Michael Mann has to pay National Review's legal fees, which are $500,000. So he went from getting $1 million to being saying you have to pay $500,000. Then, in an ironic twist, Michael Mann and his lawyers were slammed by the judge for submitting false data to a case which is about Michael Mann allegedly submitting false data for his hockey stick.
But we'll bring you all of the details on that in an interview.
Yes, we interviewed Christopher Bartolucci, who was Mark Steyn's...
Bartolomucci. Chris Bartolomucci.
Yes, who was Mark Steyn's legal representative in court. Now, as you probably remember, Mark represented himself, but Chris was there to represent his legal interest and his legal argument. So let's go over to that interview that we did earlier now. We're going to talk to Christopher Bartolomucci, who was Mark Steyn's assistant trial counsel. Now, as you remember, Mark represented himself very well, but he did have what's known as an assisting trial counsel, which Christopher can probably tell us what exactly that did. But I suppose that was to keep Mark up to date with matters of law and advice.
Probably required, actually. Yeah.
Yes. But he was very ably assisted by Christopher during the trial. So just to introduce Christopher, we're going to be speaking to him now. Chris is a partner at Share Jaffe, and he's a litigator who's represented corporations, government entities, and individuals on appeal and in trial court. His cases have been eclectic, involving matters such as constitutional law, statutory issues, product liability, tort, and defamation cases, as we know. He's also an accomplished appellate lawyer, having presented oral arguments in the US Supreme Court and won those arguments. So really, there's no one better to update us on all things Steyn and Mann. Chris, welcome to the Climate Change on Trial podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
It's great to see you. We got getting the band back together here.
Yes.
Remind us, when was the last time we were all together, by the way, Christopher? How long ago is that?
Was the trial?
Well, a little more than a year ago. The trial took place in January and February of 2024. So the rulings that we're just receiving are coming down about a year after the trial.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yes. By the way, I think we're in year 13 of this trial, of this legal process. So but the idea that you should wait a year for a ruling, by the way, is nonsense.
It's
But that's
ridiculous.
that's a
Yeah.
matter for a different.
That's
You
another.
probably can't comment on that, and it's a matter for a different podcast.
We can comment on it and say that it seems like that the process is the punishment.
Yes. So tell us. My understanding is that from Mark Steyn's side, you applied to have the jury verdict dismissed. You applied also maybe for a new trial. You also applied for the punitive damages to be reduced because of Supreme Court precedent that a punitive award cannot be more than 10 times the compensatory award. Is that a good summary of what you asked for? Tell us what you asked for first.
It is. So after the jury returned its verdict, finding that Mr. Steyn was liable and owing $1 in actual damages and $1 million in punitive damages, we filed post-trial motions with the trial judge. And we asked for a new trial. We asked him to declare that we should have won the trial. And the court didn't grant that kind of relief. But the court granted our third motion, which was to reduce or remit the amount of the punitive damage award down from $1 million. And he reduced it all the way down to $5,000. So that's a dramatic reduction in the punitive damage award.
And did he say anything other than just doing that? Did he say why he did that, or why did that make sense? Why did he suddenly think that made sense?
Oh, he did. He issued a 44-page order. Not all of it was about the punitive damage issue, but I would say more than half of it was, because the United States Supreme Court has laid out standards for punitive damage awards that are dictated by the Constitution. The Due Process Clause of the American Constitution puts a limit on the size of punitive damage awards. And one of the important considerations is, what is the ratio between the punitive damage award and the award of actual damages? In America, it's common to see a punitive award, equal to the amount of compensatory damages, or perhaps double or treble, in an extreme case, the amount of compensatory damages. But the court has said awards should rarely exceed 3 or 4 times, or perhaps as much as 9 times. But it would be a very, very rare case for a punitive award that could properly exceed such a ratio. And here, the ratio was an eye-popping 1 million to 1. So for that, based on that, and for other reasons, such as the fact that the alleged defamation here did little or no actual damage.
Yes, which was well established. Established during the case. Yep.
And the court looked at punitive damage awards in other cases that were, somewhat similar, and couldn't find anything in the ballpark of $1 million to 1. So we had told him when we sought a remittitor, we said, look, we think the punitive award should be, no more than $5,000. And the judge took us up on that and said, okay, $5,000. Yeah. So we view that as a tremendous win in this case.
And
I have questions.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. Sorry, just before we move on from that, I mean, is it not a thing that the judge should have given instruction to the jury before they made their judgment, and said to them, by the way, here's how this works. Whatever you decide, is the damage, the compensation has to be, in a ratio. Would that not be normal for the judge to have given those instructions to the jury before they retired?
I think the judge did the normal thing here. This due process analysis comes, after the fact, after the jury has returned its verdict, and then it's for the court to take a look at it and say, okay, does that meet constitutional standards or not? So I don't think this was a failure of the jury instructions. I think this was a failure to award an appropriately limited amount of punitive damages in light of the $1 nominal compensatory award.
But there was other bad news in the judgment for Michael Mann. I mean, he sued National Review Online, where the allegedly defamatory material originally appeared, and National Review Online managed to get that case dismissed, and they sued him under a slap statute, and were awarded their costs of over 500,000. So Michael Mann has to now pay National Review Online over 500,000. Explain to us what a slap is and why Mann has now been stuck with this bill.
Yeah, in American law, SLAP is an acronym for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. So if someone sues you because of something you said for your speech, you can raise an anti-SLAP defense, and that says, look, I have a First Amendment right to say what I said. This isn't defamation.
Yeah.
So this lawsuit shouldn't be brought. And there are sort of summary proceedings to get you out of the case quickly. And National Review succeeded on an anti-SLAP motion. And because of that, they were entitled to collect attorney's fees.
Nice.
And the Superior Court judge awarded about $500,000 in fees to National Review. So Michael Mann owes that money to National Review. So instead of coming away with a $1 million award from Steyn to Mann, now it's $500,000 from Mann to National Review. So this Dr. Mann's position has changed quite a bit.
Can I ask, how did National Review get their case dismissed under SLAP and Mark Steyn didn't?
Well, this actually predates my involvement in the case, so that, I'll try to be careful here. I've been in this case about a couple of years, but I think National Review got out on the ground that, well, this was Mark Steyn's blog post. It was done for the National Review, but the content of it was determined by Mr. Steyn, and we're not liable for that. I think it was something along those lines, but I could have my facts a bit wrong, as that point came down years ago.
Yes. It was a very weird ruling that if you write for National Review's in the corner blog post, that almost like you're not even an independent contractor.
It's like Facebook.
It's like Facebook. They're not responsible for what appears on their blog, even though they were paying Mark Steyn for that.
Now we should note that Dr. Mann has appealed that ruling, so they want to try to bring National Review back into the case, and I guess we'll know the answer to that in about 5 years. We'll see.
Yeah. So.
But also, I think
was there anything else of note in that first ruling by the judge?
Well, I think the notable rulings in recent days have been the large attorney fee ruling in favor of National Review and the significant reduction in the punitive damage award. And then there was a ruling that came out less than 2 hours ago.
That's correct. Right. I've got it here in front of me.
Well, let's hear from Chris. So what's the latest ruling from the judge?
Well, today, again, less than 2 hours ago, Judge Irving, the Superior Court judge, imposed sanctions, legal sanctions, on Dr. Mann and 2 of his attorneys, and he did so for misconduct during the trial. Now, one of the big problems Dr. Mann has always had in this case is showing that he had any sort of damages.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
His career just went off, well, like a hockey stick,
Yeah.
Yes.
Even following the alleged defamation. So at the trial, he and his lawyers made a big deal out of this argument that, well, my grant funding went down after the 2 blog posts came out. And he tried to convince the jury that, because of these blog posts, grant funders gave him less money than they had in years past. Now, the jury didn't buy this because it found $1 in damages.
Correct.
But here's what happened. His man himself and his lawyers misrepresented to the jury what his grant funding was and how much it had gone down over time. And the judge during the trial, I remember this distinctly.
Yes.
He said I was stunned, to hear that testimony. And then he called it, that was stunning. And the judge thought that the Mann team had knowingly presented false evidence to the jury. Now, Now, the truth came out over the course of the trial. They eventually heard the correct information. But in a ruling that came out today,
Sorry, let me just take you back there. So, how did the judge know it was false? How did they have this
because
document? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
before the trial in America, there's lots of discovery. So
Yes.
the evidence that comes in a trial is not a surprise, and so everybody knew what the grant funding amounts were, and Mann had initially offered one set of data before the trial, and later had corrected the data and offered lower numbers. But at the trial, they used the higher numbers. They didn't use the corrected lower numbers.
So, are you suggesting Michael Mann messed with the data?
Well, I'm suggesting, and Judge Irving found that he and his team, a man and his team, presented false information, incorrect data to the jury. So that was.
In fact,
it's very serious because that tainted the jury. I mean, it's very hard to take back information that has been presented to the jury
by a professor and a lawyer. In fact, let me read you what the judge said here. The court finds by clear and convincing evidence that Dr. Mann, through Mr. Fontaine and Mr. Williams, my old buddies, acted in bad faith. Fontaine and Williams are Michael Mann's lawyers, acted in bad faith when they presented erroneous evidence and made false misrepresentations to the jury and the court regarding damages stemming from the loss of grant funding. Specifically, the court finds that Mr. Fontaine and Mr. Williams knowingly violated the rules of professional conduct in eliciting testimony and offering evidence related to the post-publication unfunded grant amounts depicted in Exhibit 517A and as reproduced in Exhibit 117. And then he was very scathing about that the fact that one of Mann's arguments against this ruling would have been that, you didn't raise it at the time, and all kinds of technical, and he got very upset about them putting a technical argument out. He said Mann's arguments about failure to preserve their objections are not well taken. As detailed, Dr. Mann's counsel's bad faith misconduct. It bears repeating that Dr. Mann and his counsel should not have engaged in the falsehood and misrepresentations to the jury and the court in the first place. And what he's saying is, don't come to me with your frivolous,
technical,
legalistic arguments when you're guilty of egregious misconduct. So, what are the punishments for
doing such a thing in a court in Washington, D.C.?
And by the way, I would like to mention Mr. Fontaine and Mr. Williams are the people who, I can say this, misrepresented me in court when I asked questions of Dr. Mann outside the courthouse, and they said they didn't know who I was, that I was harassing them. I wasn't. It's there all on tape. I asked them questions. I actually introduced myself to Mr. Williams and Mr. Fontaine the day before, and I have their business card with their name written on it and who they're representing. So tell me, what was the punishment? Are there any other details of the judge's judgment that caught your eye, and what's the punishment for this egregious, frivolous, and damaging conduct?
We filed this motion on behalf of Mr. Steyn during the trial. So at the time we said, you should stop the trial, grant us a new trial, start all over. The jury's been tainted by this false information. Yes. So we didn't get any of that relief. So now that this ruling comes, well after the fact, what the judge said is that Mann and his team should have to pay some of our legal bills for the time spent correcting the record and filing a motion for sanctions. So we've been instructed to calculate how much time we devoted to this issue, because of the false evidence, and submit that time and multiply it against our hourly rate. And so that should be another fee award that Mann and his team have to pay to both to Steyn and Simberg.
I mean, obviously the part of this is connected to the reason why the jury decided to award $1 million. I mean, they were tainted. They had this information put in front of them, and they sat on it for for a long period of time. It definitely had a big effect. But it's good to see. It is good at least to see, some justice being done, even if it is coming so late in the day.
Yeah, we argued that this tainted the jury. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what piece of evidence influences a jury in what way. The jury only found $1 in actual damages, but then it awarded $1 million in punitives. And could that have been influenced by the false information about grant funding? Possibly. We thought it might have been. We thought that warranted some sort of relief or sanctions in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, I have two questions. In a case full of punitive damages, why were there no punitive damages? Is a phrase I've learned now. Punitive damages. Why were there no punitive damages against Mr. Mann, Professor Mann, and his lawyers? And yes, and how unusual, by the way, how unusual is this kind of sanction from a judge? In my experience, and I haven't been in as many courtrooms as you have, it's very unusual in my experience. And why was there no punitive damages?
Well, the only claim that went to trial was Mann's claim against Steyn and Simberg. So the damages were only going to flow in that one direction.
Correct.
There weren't claims by Steyn and Simberg against Mann.
Yeah.
So Mann was never going to have to pay anything, as a liability judgment. In terms of the frequency or rarity of this sort of sanction, it's quite rare, and I'm glad to see that. When you're doing a trial, you want to uphold the highest standards of professionalism and ethics. So I can't recall being in a case where I saw this sort of thing happen. So it's pretty rare.
And where do we go from here? What's next? Is this over now? Are we finally at the end yet of this process, or is there more?
Oh, no. Because after the trial, there is the appeal. We know that Dr. Mann is appealing the dismissal of National Review. Dr. Mann is appealing the award of $500,000 in attorney's fees to National Review. So there will be an appeal. We don't know yet whether Dr. Mann will appeal the reduction in the punitive damages. That ruling came out last week, and he has about 30 days to decide whether he plans to appeal that. So that's something we'll know by early April, whether he's appealing that ruling. And of course, he has the right to appeal the sanctions order that came out today. Mm-hmm. So it looks quite likely that there will be an appeal that goes to the DC Court of Appeals, and that will cover multiple rulings in the case.
Okay, well, I think that wraps up this particular part of the trial process and the appeal process. Anything else that has struck you from those two rulings? I know the second one just came down literally before we came on air. So anything else of note?
Well, I mentioned that the punitive damage ruling was 44 pages long. I think the sanctions order is 46 pages long. And so these are rulings that the trial judge really took his time with and was very careful about and put thought and effort into them. So these were not lightly made, but very, very well thought out. Now, that doesn't mean I agree with everything I read in the order, denying our new trial motion and motion for judgment as a matter of law. But it's clear that Judge Irving worked very hard on these orders.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Something positive then from the court in DC. Shockingly.
Finally.
Breaking news.
Finally.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for coming on the show. Did you ever address the court? Did an actor play you in it?
Yes, I wanted to ask that question.
I can't remember now. Or were you the silent witness?
In the podcast?
Yes.
No, you did have someone act in place of me.
Okay.
Well, I hope you were happy with the actor we had.
Yes.
Was he suitably Shakespearean in his
right.
oratory?
That's right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did he make you sound better?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate your time. And unfortunately, it sounds like we'll be maybe having another conversation with you in the future.
Another special episode. So I just wanted to say to anyone listening there, please leave a comment in the comments section. If you want us to continue doing this kind of work, you can donate. We're a 501c3, so go to unreportedstorysociety.com. That's unreportedstorysociety.com.
Well, the only thing I have to say that I really think is awful, coming out of this, I mean, obviously this has been, there's a lot of good news there for Mark Steyn. The bad news is it's not over. It's still not over. And I think Mark Steyn, most eloquently put it, that the process itself is the punishment. 13 years later, and it's still not over. So, but we'll keep an eye on that, and we think there could be even more developments. So we'll get back to you on that.
Because, as he said, Mann is appealing everything. Mark is appealing. I mean, this cannot stand. The defamation. This is a classic free speech case.
Yeah.
So the defamation argument just cannot stand. It'll be dismissed at a higher court.
But if the climate alarmists love anything, Phelim, the thing that they really love most is travel.
Well, no, they like a bit of protest and violence as well.
Well, a bit of protest and violence, but they really do like a bit of international travel.
Actually,
now.
if they can combine both, if they can do international travel
with a bit of protesting
and violence.
Yes. But now, when they go on their travels now, they like to be going to nice places, Phelim, and staying in nice posh hotels and stuff.
True.
And you know how they get there. We all know how to get there. They get there in private jets because, of course, they're immune, I think, for some reason. They get some kind of dispensation because of the fact that they're saving the planet.
It's like the COVID where the public health officials said that we couldn't be in a coffee shop together, but
Gavin Newsom could love it up with them.
10,000 people can go and protest for George Floyd, or 100,000 people, because being a George Floyd protester gave you immunity to COVID.
So if that wasn't enough hypocrisy for you from the climate change crazies, right? The latest news is just super delightful.
Yes.
So the next COP is going.
What is a COP?
Climate. What does it stand for? COP.
Anyway, it's the United Nations Climate Change Conference. It's going to be in Brazil, near the Amazon, in the Amazon rainforest.
The Amazon rainforest.
So what are they going to do? They're going to cut a road into the Amazon.
13 kilometers.
8 miles if you live in civilized parts of the world.
They're going to strip the rainforest of trees in order to have a conference where they complain about people damaging the rainforest.
Yes, well, the rainforest, the 4-lane highway is called
Avenida Liberdade.
It's at the Freedom Avenue. See, they're admitting roads bring you freedom. So diggers' machine are going to carve through the forest floor, destroy the wetlands, put down tarmac or whatever. But do you remember we've been lectured time and time again about
how valuable the rainforest is? Exactly.
The lungs of the earth. Remember that?
Yeah, no.
And now the people who lecture us about driving cars are building a road for cars.
The humanity.
Yes. So now, I mean, that's right. The rainforest was all about reabsorption, reabsorbing
yes.
the carbon dioxide. But we've been there before. Imagine if this was a mining company saying,
yeah.
This project is going to, and the government is clear, this project is going, COP 30 is going to bring enormous economic benefits to the area.
But I think what we're really looking forward to is that when the COP opens, when the summit opens, and they're going to be doing their land acknowledgements, will they be doing the land acknowledgements for the people whose lives have been completely disrupted by this massive destruction of the rainforest? I don't know about that. And this is by the way, this has to be. I bet it's not the first time, by the way, that this is an environmentally sanctioned deforestation project.
Of course not. It's when they do it. It's not.
It's just different, And by the way, and I just want to do this because we actually went to one of these climate change conferences back in the day in Copenhagen. Phelim and I went to Copenhagen. And what was amazing to me about Copenhagen was how many people went to Copenhagen to complain about people going places.
Yes.
In fact, the number of people who are going to go to the rainforest, just 50,000 people are going to go to that climate change party.
And you know the way
it is a party, and we've saw that it is a party. Now it's a party of these very tree huggy types. They're not
kind of joyless in some respects.
Yes, a bit joyless now. But there they are, though, banging away on their Apple Mac and banging away on their iPhones. Yes. Not all the while.
Not banging away in the bars. Boom, boom.
We're not going to talk about the banging anywhere else. But the one thing that is, they've got all the equipment. And the thing that I always thought when I was at the Copenhagen Climate Conference was, I kept thinking, do they realise that this iPhone that they have, this iPhone of which you're holding many of, was mined? Like somebody blew a hole in the ground to make that said iPhone. Yes. So then they're using said iPhone, said Apple Mac to then protest mining projects. Yes. But they don't see the connection. There's no connection when it involves themselves.
But they don't see the connection between them flying, using planes, and telling us we can't fly. I mean, and I remember they always had all these goodie bags. Maybe they should be given machetes as part of their goodie bags to remind themselves of how they destroyed the forest to get there. I quite like Adler Silveira, the Brazilian government's infrastructure secretary, said it's just wonderful. But it's a sustainable highway.
Oh, I love that sustainability.
A sustainable highway through the rainforest and an important mobility intervention. He's right about that. Roads are an important mobility intervention.
I love that.
It's going to have wildlife crossings.
You never thought of a road as a mobility.
Bike lanes.
What did you call it again? A mobility what now?
Important mobility intervention.
So that's what a road is. Those of you who would use the word road, why not get rid of the word road and say it's a mobility intervention? Much easier to say, by the way.
New hotels are also being built. I love this bit. And the report has been redeveloped so cruise ships can dock there to accommodate excess visitors.
The horror. Not cruise ships, Phelim.
Yeah, no. Cruise ships are evil everywhere else except when they are sheltering climate activists.
Our cruise ship, however, which will be bringing Mark Steyn and Mark Steyn's crew around the side of the Mediterranean and up to Barcelona, up to Lisbon, up to wherever, up to Southampton in a couple of weeks. Now, there'll be no harm in that at all now.
I don't know if you can still go on the cruise with us.
I wish you could.
Go to Steyn online. They might be able to book seats there. We would love to see you on the cruise. You'll get to hear us talk. You'll get to hear Mark Steyn talk. You'll get to hear Lawrence Fox talk. You'll get to hear Alison Pearson, Naomi Wolf. It's a motley crew, as they say. But my favourite piece of hypocrisy: the government is going to invest more than $81 million to expand the local airport capacity from 7 million to 14 million passengers.
Delightful.
A year.
Okay, and I thought air travel was like almost the worst thing you could do.
As Greta would say.
How dare you?
Let's watch Greta say, "How dare you?"
How dare you?
Let's watch her say it.
How dare you?
By the way, do you know when you were talking about all hypocrisy, it just reminded me, we did a series a few years ago called Hypocrites. And one of my favourites, by the way, and it actually comes back, what I really like, and it comes back, and I bet he'll be at this conference, is who was Prince Charles and who is now King Charles. King Charles, and he was at some kind of whatever event. We're going to play the piece of tape in a moment here. But he was at an event, and basically he has the line. It's the classic line. It's a beautiful line, and we'll actually put a link in the show notes for the whole piece we did with Prince Charles, then Prince Charles, King Charles now, where he said, "We're just going to have to learn to live with less." So when he's living with less, though, I'm all about it.
Yes,
I'm really all about it. You know, because I think sincerity. I'm actually into the sincerity thing. If you're going to do this, go be sincere. But you know what? It isn't nice.
Well, sincere, you know.
We had a conversation about sincere yesterday.
We did with someone who said.
I was the person who said, Phelim, that sincerity for ideology works really, really well if you're extraordinarily wealthy.
Works easily.
It works. Well, no, you can be really super sincere because it won't hurt you.
No, but my argument is that sincere. This was prompted by a conversation I think we had on Friday night with an individual who said a certain other individual.
Oh God, this is getting very difficult.
I don't.
No, I know, but I'm trying to work out what you're saying. Go on ahead.
Was sincere because he knew that he was refusing to invest in carbon companies, oil companies, that kind of thing.
Yes.
But the thing is that if you're a multi-billionaire, then you can say, I will take a lower return on my investments because you can afford, you don't need the money, you know.
I actually think, by the way, that particular individual that we were talking about, that investor, is even within that, I think he's unusual, because I think there's plenty of investors who say that they're big climate people, but are actually investing in fossil fuels in some way.
I think because that investor we're talking about doesn't have public. It's family money, whereas most of the people investing, they're investing government pensions, they're investing pension funds in wealthy individuals. They have a fiscal responsibility to get the best return. By the way, I think also we need a climate doge.
Oh, we definitely need a climate doge. Oh, yeah.
You know, that would be the thing. Like somebody to go into. Anyway, let's play that tip.
We are making it cool to use less stuff.
Delightful.
So now we get to Mahmoud Khalil.
Mahmoud.
Oh, sorry.
Mahmoud Khalil.
Mahmoud.
Mahmoud Khalil.
Why did I call him Muhammad? Perhaps because I'm just like
Peace
that.
be upon him.
Yes.
All right then, Phelim, tell us about Mahmoud Khalil, because this is the student from Colombia who I think, by the way, technical point, isn't a student. This is the former student from Colombia, because I think he's graduated.
That's right, he has.
So and again, we're confused by this because he seems to continue to be in Colombia student accommodation, but he's not a student.
Now, I, in his defense, which are words that do not come easy, I think perhaps, is his wife a student at Columbia?
No, I don't think so. I don't think she's a dentist or something.
Oh.
Or some kind of, but she's no.
Now, what is he still doing in
we don't know the answer to that.
Colombia?
We don't know that. But there's a lot of questions.
We know this because he was arrested at Columbia accommodation. So
there's a lot of questions.
He's currently a guest of the state
of Louisiana, I believe.
State of Louisiana, and he's a guest of the federal government.
But they've put him into a facility in Louisiana, and yes. I think that's very wise.
And because they say that he has exceeded the permissible activities that his visa, he's currently on a green card. And so Marco Rubio was asked by a reporter, why are you deporting this family man? So Khalil has been a spokesperson for various protest groups on Colombia that have committed crimes, have trespassed, have assaulted guards.
So this is what Marco Rubio had to say when he was asked a question about this by a reporter recently. He said, this is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. Fair enough. No one has a right to a green card, by the way. When you come to the United States as a visitor, which is what a visa is, which is how this individual entered this country on a visitor's visa, you are here as a visitor. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a student visa. I'm a big supporter of Hamas. If you actually end up doing that once you're in this country on such a visa, we will revoke it. And if you end up having a green card, not citizenship, but a green card as a result of that visa, while you're here doing those activities, we're going to kick you out. It's as simple as that. So when you apply for a student visa or any visa to visit the United States, enter the United States, we have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down, being complicit in what are clearly crimes, vandalization, complicit in shutting down institutions, if you told us that's what you intended to do when you come to America, we would have never let you in. Now we're obviously people who are part of this whole visa situation.
We have
some history here.
We have an interest. We have expertise in all this.
But one thing I know we're having a big conversation about this. But I think one thing that's very interesting to us that came out recently to us ourselves was that this process is murky. By the way, it's incredibly murky, and it's not at all clear. And it seems it's quite subjective.
Yes,
but
and I believe deliberately subjective, so that left-wing immigration people can let people like Mahmoud Khalil into the country.
However, as we speak right now, he is in detention, and we are not clear what he has done illegally.
Yes,
that's a huge point here.
So there's as many of you know, there is a huge difference between freedom of speech and the lack of freedom to commit crimes. You're not allowed to commit crimes.
No.
You're not allowed to assist people committing crimes.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to instruct people to commit a crime right away. However, you are allowed to say such terrible things in America, and thank God you are. I hate Irish people. I hate people of different colors. I hate Jews. I hate Muslims. You're allowed to say that in America. And this is the wonderful thing about America, that free speech is here. And free speech is not about people saying nice things, that I support Trump or, I
think that the main point is free speech is not about things that I like people saying in a loud voice. Because guess what? One of these days, the things that you like people saying might be decided that people won't like, other people mightn't like that. So it can't be, you have to be defending things that people say that you don't like.
So I just don't see the basis for expelling Mahmoud.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe they know something we don't. I want to go through Rubio's speech.
But actually, let me just go back here a minute, because I just read that. But I think what's interesting is that we did all witness what happened at Columbia.
Yes.
And what did happen at Columbia
was criminal.
Was well past any kind of free speech issue. Jewish students who had paid probably astronomical fees to be there, were not allowed to get into class.
Yes.
Buildings were overtaken, and huge amounts of property damage was done.
Yes.
People were hurt.
Assaulted.
I think police officers
Or
were assaulted. That's all. That stuff. If he did any of that stuff, it's all good.
If he directed any of that. So let me just go through the parts of, Marco Rubio says this is not about free speech. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to the green card. When you come to the United States as a visa, you're here as a visitor. We can deny you that if you tell us when you apply, hi, I'm trying to get into the United States on a visa. I'm a big supporter of Hamas. Right. Now, actually, my memory of the visa form is, have you ever been a member or material supporter of? Right. There's a difference between supporting. So I can say I support Hamas, right? Ooh, I don't, but I can say that. But if I that's free speech. If I give Hamas money, that is illegal.
So I'm going to disagree with my husband here on this one, because I don't think it's as clear cut as that. And I think actually Rubio, I think he's onto something there, where I think if you write, you're asked to describe a little bit of why do you want to be in America? And you write down on your visa application, I'm a huge supporter of a terrorist organization. I think you'll find you won't get the visa. And I understand your point about free speech, but actually, funny enough, the green card, this is kind of different. This is the green card and the visa, by the way, is a kind of a different process. At that point, you're outside the country. You're outside the country at that point, right? So I don't think they have to respect your thoughts outside the country.
No, he applied for the green card whilst he was here on a student visa.
No, but I think the point that Marco Rubio says is if you're applying to come into this country and you say, I'm a big supporter of Hamas, we're a terrorist organization, I think there could be some problems.
I think there could be problems legally with that. I think they don't have a legal... But let's move on.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
But I think the point, Phelim, is actually the end of the end of the Marco Rubio quote is the part that's important.
Yes,
where he says, we're going to turn down. You're not going to get a visa if you're complicit in clearly in crimes, vandalization, complicit in shutting down institutions, which is exactly what happened at Colombia.
Yes.
We just don't know how much proof there is that this Mahmoud Khalil.
Was
and
if
they can't find the evidence, it's going to be a problem.
If they can't find crimes that he was complicit in, as Marco Rubio says, crimes, vandalization, shutting down institutions. I will add assaulting Jewish students, trespassing. If he's not complicit in any of those, then they have to let Mahmoud Khalil go. And I know he's not a citizen, but if you are here under a visa, I believe you have the same protections under due process that a citizen does.
Well, it's interesting. There's another piece of that. I just realised there's another part of this interview where Marco Rubio's been questioned on this, and he says, not just this student, we're going to do more. In fact, every now and then we're approving visa revocations. If that visa led to a green card, the green card process as well. The bottom line is this: if you're in this country to promote Hamas, to promote terrorist organizations, we never would have let you in if we had known that. And now that we do know, you're out. It's as simple and straightforward as that. So we're wondering if he's actually on solid legal grounds there.
See, the word promote is doing a lot of work there, right?
I see Margaret Brennan was questioning him, and she said, but is there any evidence of a link to terrorism, or is it just his point of view? And Rubio says, are you aware of the pro-Hamas encampments that took place on college campuses after October 7, Hamas terrorist attack on Israel? These guys took over entire buildings.
These guys.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. They need to get the proof. They vandalized colleges. If you had told us that you were going to do that, we would never have given you the visa. Now you're here. Now you do it. You lied to us. You're out. So it'll be interesting, and it's one we should really watch very carefully, but I think they need to find illegal activity.
But I know this will possibly annoy a lot of our listeners that I'm not saying defending Mahmoud Khalil.
We're defending free speech.
And we're defending due process, which the left do not believe in, but we believe in it. And there's no point in defending free speech and due process for Donald Trump, for someone that you might materially support or whatever. You've got to defend it for your enemies as well, your opponents. And We will follow this indeed. We will
Yeah.
follow this indeed. What are we on about? Always talking about.
Talking about free speech,
Actually,
by the
this
way,
is very
and actually,
interesting.
funny enough, this is not a bad segue actually from that free speech issue with Marco Rubio
Yes.
to what's just happened recently in Ireland, in
Yes.
Dublin. And I don't know whether we should start with showing this video or should we describe it first. But
Yeah, let's do a little bit of description. So in the week of St. Patrick's Day, spitting on Jews because they are Jews seems to be a new Irish pastime. It's a real tradition.
two Irish women, and by the way, the names are interesting of the two Irish women. The first woman is Zina Ishmael.
She'd be one of the Ishmaels of County Cork, which you know on.
Oh, it's a very Irish name, that Ishmael.
Yes. If you do ancestry.com, Ishmaels, they've been there since 1542.
Philip.
The former High Kings of Ulster, actually,
Stop
the
it now.
Ishmaels.
And then Lena Seal, another great Irish name there.
Seal, yes.
Seal.
Yes.
Of the Seals of Mayo. Never
Yes,
heard of them, right?
yes.
Somehow found out that a man called Tamir O'Hayon, an Israeli businessman, was in Ireland and having a drink at a very posh bar in Dunleary, outside of Dublin. And they went there. Now, immediately, by the way, there's a huge suspicion. I have huge questions here. How did they find out where the guy was? They went there, approached his table, told him they were tracking him, and launched a verbal assault.
And a physical assault. Yeah.
And according to a video posted by Mr. Ishmael,
Miss
Ishmael. So
Because
they
she-
actually posted their own video, by the way.
Yes.
When Mr. O'Hine says to one of the women that she is not welcome at his table,
Miss Ishmael, we don't have the video for this, responds, she's bleeping Irish
bleep,
and calls Mr. O'Hayon.
the son of a whore.
Yes. So then Mr. O'Hayon starts filming. Actually, and this is where we have, and they give him the middle finger. Watch the video. And she informs him, Zionists are not welcome in Ireland. Bleep you and bleep you. Let's play that video now, and let's bleep those bleeps, by the
Yes,
way.
and we'll have it bleeped.
My better side.
Guys, please.
You can take a video all you want.
Guys,
You're not welcome in Ireland.
Zionists are not welcome in Ireland.
Yes,
Israel is on its way out. Believe me, Israel is on its way out. And you're not.
The Israeli American empire is crumbling.
I love you too. I hope. Did you just spit on me?
I did.
Okay.
And I actually did not miss.
Can you call the police, please? Thank you.
Because this was an attack.
Yeah, like I got spit on.
Oh, I wish I kept recording this. Oh no, I'm in fact.
Why do you keep recording me, this lady? Like you can be very quiet.
Okay, you saw that. He says, I love you too. Miss Ishmael spits on him. And when he says, you just
spit on me?
Yes, I did. I did. And I actually did not miss. So that goes back to Miss Muhammad Khalil. See, up until then, under American law, it's freedom of speech. You can say bleep you and bleep Israel, and we bleep and don't like bleeping Zionists, we bleeping this and bleeping that. That's free speech.
I would agree with you on that, film. However, I would say there's a technical. Just before we get to the spit itself, by the way, these women are shouting at this guy in a business, in a very posh upmarket bar in Dunleary, just outside Dublin. I think in a business, however, you can eject people for unruly behaviour.
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
what is extremely disturbing, a lot of people have pointed this out. One of the most disturbing aspects of this awful video is that there's lots of people in that restaurant. No one moves. No one gets up. The management of the hotel don't do anything. And I think, Phelim, you phoned the management.
I phoned the management, and I got speaking to a very stressed sounding Indian chap who I think it was the receptionist. And he was saying, it's in the hands of the Gardaí now, and we're not commenting.
And the word Gardaí, by the way, means
the
police. It's the Irish for police.
We were talking about that. So that's Miss Ishmael. And if you saw, so Miss Ishmael is the one on the right. Miss Seal is the one on the left. So Miss Ishmael, according to her LinkedIn profile, is apparently an Irish resident who originally came from Lebanon to live in Ireland. Aren't we great in Ireland? She claims to have a master's degree from University College Dublin. I'm sure she does, by the way.
I'm sure she does.
And she previously worked for TikTok, monitoring the safety of online advertisements.
Isn't that great? The safety of advertisements.
Yes, because we're so in danger from advertisements.
Yes.
So that's Miss Ishmael. And if you saw, so Miss Ishmael is the one on the right. Miss Seal is the one on the left. So Miss Ishmael, according to her LinkedIn profile, is apparently an Irish resident who originally came from Lebanon to live in Ireland. Aren't we great in Ireland? She claims to have a master's degree from University College Dublin. I'm sure she does, by the way.
I'm sure she does.
And she previously worked for TikTok, monitoring the safety of online advertisements.
Isn't that great? The safety of advertisements.
Yes, because we're so in danger from advertisements.
Yes.
So Miss Seal.
The other girl
Yes.
is a mixed media artist, whatever that means, model and an activist.
She's a model.
She's a mixed media artist, Phelim. Would you stop yourself now?
No, she's a model as well.
Yes, no, I'm not missing that.
Yes, but can
We
just-
have seen her.
Can we put up a picture of her, a model? Okay, we'll talk about that later. We've talked about there's a lot of things wrong in this
Yes.
interaction, and as you said earlier, no one
got up.
No one got up. No bar staff person intervened. You know, in the movie of our life, you know, we all think we're Schindler.
Well, this is something that, this has become a huge thing of recent, where people think, you know, in their lives, you know, where you're running a movie of who you think you'd be in every situation. You're always Schindler, right? You're going to be always Schindler in the Schindler List movie, right? But of late, we've all discovered that it's actually not true, and it's happened, and because
COVID was the big.
COVID was the start of it, by the way. October 7 has made it much worse, but you're right. COVID was the start of it. And I'll give you that quick story, which I think I've mentioned on this podcast before. The village where we have a house in Ireland, very small village, like really, really, it couldn't get smaller. And in the winter, it's unbelievably small. Like there's hardly anybody living there at all. And there was a couple who do live there. And they spotted a man who lived at the other end of the beach and was on his own. And they could see him walking on the beach, you know, COVID and whatever. And they thought, look, sure, everyone's stuck inside, you know, we're all alone here. So they met him on the beach and they said to him, sure, you should come and have your dinner in our house and we'll put you at the end of the table. Like, we'll be all very correct about this. But come in and have your dinner and we can at least have the chat and not be alone. And sure, he was delighted. This guy was just delighted.
Yeah.
That lasted not long at all, because one of the fabulous neighbours in the village reported him to the police.
Yeah.
And the police came along, you know, and suddenly they see the police taking photographs of his number plate, of this gentleman's number plate. So we all have learned.
Just to let you know, in Ireland, you couldn't travel more than 3 kilometres from your house.
You couldn't have any guests in your house, with all of that kind of thing. So basically, when you ever, you know, the question of, in the Anne Frank story, you always have the question of, oh my God, who would have ever told about the Frank story? Who would have ever said that the Frank family are all up in the attic? Well, no, we have no issue wondering about that now. Everyone would. And there's two kinds of people, by the way, Phelim, I think, and I'm going to just make this sudden point here, which is there are those people who are super active, like the Franks are up there, right, by the way. That man is having, you know, illegally having dinner with those people, trying to stave off his loneliness and depression. But then there's another kind of person, which I've become very aware of late. There's the people with no courage who do nothing in the face of injustice. Mm-hmm. And those are now, and it's interesting, we've come across a lot of those people. Yeah. People who will write to us and say, you know, you're great.
You're brave.
You're really great. I can't say anything myself. Yeah. Now, the reason people can't say anything themselves is for money reasons. It's all money. I don't want to lose any money. Now, they don't say that. They never say that. They say, you're great. I can't tell you how many people...
Yeah. I've said that about October 7.
I've said that to us about October 7 and the work that we've done on October 7. And you know what? It's really disappointing. And I'm getting to a stage where, you know what? If enough people of those kind of people stood up and stood with us, things could change very dramatically, because, of course, the people who are not saying anything are people who are very, very powerful.
I think there's a third category.
Oh, God, look at you, Phelim, with the
third
third
you've got
category.
The people who will...
There's where the Franks
live. And then there are people who will say nothing even though they know it's wrong. There's the people who don't know that it's wrong, but will believe the government experts and credentialed Jew hunters.
Yes.
Who will say it is for the good of the nation state and the health of the community that the Jews are removed and sent to the concentration camps. And I am a credentialed expert in eugenics and nation state economics and well-being, and you have to believe me. And they're going, well, the experts said it.
Yeah, well, experts, I'm hoping, you know, you'd like to think that after COVID that experts are having the worst day ever.
I don't think so. Listen, there's a lot of points being made. People before profit, the party, have not condemned it.
The political party, their leadership.
Yes.
Wait, the leader of the political party, people before profit, actually lives in the constituency where this hotel is, Dunleary. Hasn't, to date, by the way, we'll say on St. Patrick's Day so far today, has not said anything yet publicly.
Yes,
about
official
this
Ireland
woman.
has been very quiet. The Lord Mayor of Dunleary, thankfully, has been very vocal in condemning it. The leaders of all the political parties have said nothing. So there's no Schindlers in the political class in Ireland. Now,
that's a really good point, by the way. Now, there was Sharon, by the way. We have Senator Sharon Keoghan, who is wonderful. You know, we have the...
Ronan Daly, is it? Ronan... You know,
but they're very isolated.
You
These
could
names,
not count them on your hand.
No, it's
not enough of them.
There is not a handful of them.
No. Yes, that's true. There's not a handful.
There's literally not a handful of them.
Yes. Now, this is something worth talking about. The spit
Is an assault.
is an assault and would be considered so in most countries.
And by the way, and it's worth mentioning this, imagine if they spat at a black person. And I can imagine the minute I've said that, you're going to go, oh, right? What's the difference?
What about no blacks?
What's the difference?
No blacks allowed in Ireland.
But what's the difference, by the way? What's the difference if they'd spat at a black person? It's exactly the same, but I can tell you one thing. My God, we'd all know about it. We would all know about it. And I would tell you one thing, that the President of Ireland would have at this point spoken.
The black person would be a T in the President's house.
Correct. 100%.
He'd be elected President at the next election, by the way.
No one in Ireland would say we were wrong about that.
No.
Like, everyone would agree with us. We all know that that's exactly what happened.
Go to the front of the Irish Times newspaper today on St. Patrick's Day. You'll see all these black children wearing St. Patrick's. There's a pathological obsession with photographing black children on St. Patrick's Day to show how diverse we are. So the verbal abuse could be a crime in Ireland, right? It probably is not a crime in Ireland. That's a good thing. As we said earlier, freedom of speech is about defending bad speech, not the speech you like. But we need to remind you that Ireland almost passed hate speech legislation last year, and it was heavily supported. That would have criminalised most insulting speech. It was heavily supported by people for profit. The people who stopped it were the Irish right and conservatives, including Elon Musk, because the Irish right knew it would be used against them for saying, telling the truth about immigration and other matters. But it's very ironic that if it had passed, possibly one of the first people to be victimised by the hate speech legislation would have been one of their members. But by the way, they would only have done that so then they could go full sail on to attack the far right or the right-wing people.
And just so you know, by the way, so these guys are in the bar, this awful thing happens. They did phone the police. They asked for the police to be called. The police arrived 2 hours later. And by the way, Dunleary is not in the middle of the countryside. It's a city, by the way, a major city.
City attached to a city.
Yeah.
And as Mr. O'Nahan said, the police...
They didn't seem to care, he said.
That's what the direct quote, didn't seem to care at all about the matter. But however, after the assault became international news, they have belatedly announced an investigation. The guy had it in video. Everyone has identified these two girls, ladies. I mean... Have they been arrested? Have you questioned them? They're there, you know.
Yeah.
I like, you know, Miss Ishmael of County Cork. She used to be a paid social media moderator, removing your posts or advertisements because of their unsuitable, unacceptable comments. And I think we know whose content she protected and who she targeted. And Miss Seal is, of course, the lady on the left. Let's have a look at her on the left.
Mixed media artist and model.
Yes. Which I think says a lot about the inclusiveness of the modelling industry in Ireland.
I think that's enough there, Phil said. I think you covered it that now, really, with that
She's
comment.
well covered,
and for those people who are listening rather than watching this podcast, let's just say that Miss Seal is what would have been kindly called in the past,
but what?
Full-bodied.
I think it says a lot about body positivity.
There you go, Phil. All right.
Yes. So, listen, we could just go on. So Ireland, example number 754 of anti-Semitism in Ireland. So at Dublin City University, which is in the north of the city, the students just decided, we've had enough of this anti-Semitism. So they formed a group called Students Supporting Israel. Which is
an international, I believe it's an international organisation. It's all over the place. But yes. they decided to open a chapter at DCU.
And you spoke to the organiser last
I spoke to Jamie O'Mahony actually before this. There's been a development in this case, yes. And I haven't talked to him since, but I did talk to him at the time. And
so
and by the way, they've formed this society and they're looking to get credentialed by the college. And from what I heard from him, it was taking a bit of time.
Yeah, of course. We know this taking a bit of time. So they put a table up with an Israeli flag, offered literature. They've got 2,000 online comments.
Hate-filled comments.
Yes, filled with the worst kind of threats of violence.
So that was the first thing that happened. So after they had this, yes. And they were all excited, by the way, when they started this chapter, and they had a meeting. I can't remember how many students were at it.
And then Jamie is also the leader of the debating society of Dublin City University.
Yeah, he's the chair of the DC Debating Society.
Yes.
And the Debating Society called him into an emergency meeting.
Yes.
Of the society.
And by an overall majority, this is according to the Ireland-Israel Alliance, they've issued a statement. He was removed from his position as the chair of the society because of his affiliation with the students supporting Israel movement. And they claimed he was endangering committee members. And where do you hear the aims and objectives of the DCU Debate Society?
So the first aim is to facilitate a forum for the orderly exchange of ideas and views. That sounds great, Phelim, by the way.
Yes, except when you create something with an idea or a view
that we don't like,
or that's the opposite of another idea or a view, you get fired. And then
their second value is the promotion and encouragement of critical arguments. The promotion and encouragement. So if there wasn't a great example of something worth debating, like this is literally the perfect thing to debate and in a timely manner. Yes. And instead of doing that, they are basically silencing. They're silencing, and they've removed Jamie O'Mahony from his position as the chair, by the way, of the organisation of the debating college. Yeah. So we're going to get back onto that, and we'll probably try and get Jamie onto the podcast next week to explain all of what's happened.
We should probably stop talking about Ireland now, but I suppose it is St. Patrick's Day week.
Oh, that's true, Phelim. Look
so
at us.
I remember when,
nothing good, by the way.
There's an old joke that when you used to fly into Northern Ireland in the plane, the pilot would come on and say, "Hello, we're flying into Northern Ireland now. You're flying from England. We're flying into Belfast. Please set your watches back 30 years, right, or 200 years, right." So Ireland was always known as a backward little country that had. As Churchill said, the great after the Great War, the dreary steeples of Fermanagh and Tyrone are still stuck in some ancient argument of 500 years ago.
Oh.
So yes, Northern Ireland has joined the progressive madness of the world. It's now a modern progressive place because we have had our first radical Islamic stabbing. I'm from Northern Ireland, by the way, but we live in...
I'm so happy for you, Phelim, and happy for all of the people of Northern Ireland to be brought into this pantheon of nations.
Yes, it is with, Robert, who was it? Robert Emmet, the Irish patriot. Until Ireland takes its place among the nations of the world, then and only then shall my epitaph be written. And then he was taken off and be hung. So I think Northern Ireland has taken its place among the progressive nations of the world.
According to the Belfast Telegraph, an 18-year-old from North Africa was arrested under the Terrorism Act for stabbing a 51-year-old man in the chest with a kitchen knife.
So how can we be sure it's a radical Islam attack? Well, first of all, he's charged under the Terrorism Act, but the police, several weeks later, the police say they're still investigating this as a possible terrorist attack, but the motive is still under investigation. So that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. So basically, if it was a domestic dispute, if it was anything but radical Islam, they would have told us right away. But we know when they're saying we're unclear, they know exactly what's going on, but they're holding it back for political reasons. So as immigration increases into Northern Ireland is about to discover that progressivism and mass immigration mean a little bit more than colourful costumes, happy national days, and exciting couscous recipes at shishi restaurants. Progressivism has consequences. Embrace it at your peril. Sorry. So I got to include this one. I know it's very Irish-centric today, but
we're going to allow this just for St. Patrick's Day.
The United Nations has accused Israel of genocide for bombing a fertility clinic. Apparently, allegedly they bombed a fertility clinic, and 4,000 embryos were destroyed. RTE, the state broadcaster in Ireland, have written about this, saying, yes, this is appalling, terrible, terrible. But to me, the RTE, which was a big supporter of abortion, the United Nations, which is a big supporter of abortion, if Israel is guilty of genocide for destroying embryos, doesn't that mean that the embryos that they're admitting conception begins at life?
Boom, boom.
Yes.
Eventually you get them, Phelim.
Which was the last thing the embryos heard too. Boom, boom.
That's not even funny at all, Phelim.
Our producer's laughing.
Yes, inappropriately. I will speak to him later. That's highly irregular. I'm very, very bad. And it's actually really, really sad. I hate the idea of these embryos that are all over the place, by the way. And it's not just those babies, but they're all over the world. I mean, no one knows what number of babies that are produced and then discarded. But yes, but there you go. RT suddenly finds, so the Irish national broadcaster suddenly finds the humanity in these children that are being stored in containers. Because it gives them an opportunity to say the word genocide again, which is all really that they care about. Moving right along, because we're coming to the end of the show.
Yes.
So, I don't know, Phelim, how do we even start talking about this test?
See, this is not really news. Stephen Colbert, an idiot, a fool, a hypocrite. That's not news. But no, so yes.
So all over America right now, you probably know, and probably all over the world, I think it's happening. You know, Tesla cars
and
showrooms are being, bombed, basically destroyed, vandalized. Cars are being keyed, and there's a huge amount of this going on all over the place now. As so very popular late night, apparently popular late night show host Stephen Colbert decided that he would talk about this as part of his monologue, right, Phelim?
Yeah. So, and he basically supported the destruction of the Teslas. He just supported the destruction of the showrooms and said, but of course, I condemn violence from the bottom of my heart. Or sorry, not from the bottom. I condemn violence from the bottom of the CBS Legal Standards Department. In other words, I'd love to tell you how much I support this, but I'm slightly prohibited by the CBS Legal Department.
Can we play a little bit of that?
I don't think we can, because then Stephen Colbert will get our podcast taken down because we breached his copyright. This is what they do, and I don't want to give Stephen Colbert that excuse. However, Stephen Colbert,
but what's really fabulous about this, so basically he definitely was encouraging vandalism, or making it very clear to people that he thought they were fabulous for doing this. Yes. But you know what's really amazing? Because I remember when you were saying this, Phelim, you're saying, yeah, I bet he wouldn't like his car to be vandalized. And then I was thinking, I wonder what kind of car Stephen Colbert drives. And I really genuinely just checked it out on Grok again. It just feels like I'm doing advertisements for Grok now. And I got this fabulous information. Stephen Colbert drives a Tesla Model S. More than that, though, he's owned it since 2014. But more than that, he has unscripted, constantly said how much he loves the car. So
even during an interview with Elon Musk.
So he had an interview on where he couldn't have loved Elon Musk enough in 2015. Obviously, this is prior to Elon Musk deciding to have a bromance with Trump, who is, But here's what he said during the interview with Elon Musk. Colbert, he gushed about his car. I love my Tesla. I'm not joking. I drive it every day and it's the most amazing thing. It's like driving the future. He raved about its instant torque and quiet ride. You've had that, Phelim.
It's an amazing...
Phelim has driven a friend's Tesla and you're still talking about it.
Still talking about it. And I'm not even into cars. It's an amazing driving experience. It's not like a car at all.
So Colbert went on to say it's a spaceship on wheels and praising the over-the-air software updates that make it better while I sleep. Basically, he went on again, another show. Before transitioning to the Late Show, Colbert mentioned his Model S on his Comedy Central show, joking, I drive a Tesla, which means I'm saving the planet. One smug grin at a time. He highlighted its eco-friendly appeal, accelerating, noting, it's so fast, I feel like I'm in a video game and I'm winning. Again in 2017, he had another monologue. I've had my Tesla for years now and it's still the coolest thing I've ever driven. It's like the car knows me better than my wife does. I can sit back and let it handle traffic while I practice my monologue. It's brilliant.
Yes. Hypocrite of the year. So listen, talking of hypocrites, and we'll just go through this briefly. Do you hear that noise?
That's the silence.
That's silence of all the democracy. Trump is a threat to democracy weirdos.
Who have absolutely nothing to say about the fact that Romania has now removed a second
presidential
conservative candidate for president.
Yes, they removed one Colin Georgescu. They removed Calin Georgescu. They removed his. He won the first round of the presidential election. He came out of nowhere. He's anti-NATO, anti-EU, anti-establishment, skeptical. So they just removed him for made-up political reasons. They removed his replacement, and now I think there's a number 3 that they can't remove.
Really?
Yes.
I mean, why not?
I think it's so embarrassing.
But I mean, what I think is really interesting is you're going to have an army of ACLUs, by the way, dealing with the Mahmoud Khalil story.
Yes.
There'll be an army of them
yes.
talking about free speech. They have nothing. They have not one iota to say about these people, these 2 candidates for conservative candidates in Romania, who, by the way, neither of whom have committed a crime of any kind that they're being like they didn't murder anyone.
They're charging Calin Georgescu with the crime of going against the constitution or some nonsense, just made up nonsense, and there's all the leftists and all the establishment. Viktor Orban in Hungary. Viktor Orban has been elected and re-elected and elected and re-elected and elected and re-elected, and it keeps getting increasing majorities, but they keep calling him authoritarian and autocrat. He gets elected.
Yes.
They won't allow this guy to run for election, this party to run for election, for fear he'll get elected, and you are silent. You are truly terrible people.
Bad people.
Yes. So listen,
that's it for this week.
If you want us to do more, please go to Unreported Story Society and donate what you can. We're a 501c3. Your donation is tax deductible. Happy St. Patrick's Week, and we will see you again.
Hopefully we'll have some nice news from Ireland at some point in the future, but
Yes.
it doesn't look like it'll be anytime soon.
Go to Steyn online if you want to check out the cruise that you could join Mark Steyn and us. We
think it's probably too late though, but we will be
never know.
updating you, and we will do a little bit of podcasting, I think, when we're on the cruise.
From the boot.
But we'll have more to say about that next week.
Thank you. Bye.